Then you're gonna come back up a little bit more. 1, 2, 3. Because then the weakness will stay the same. You have to actually focus on the weakness as hard as I can. Feeling it the whole time. We're gonna keep getting after it until we get there. A couple of things that Eric taught me about the brachialis training is that we're trying to keep this carry angle, which is basically where my elbow positioning, my wrist positioning is in a specific position where my pull is outside my elbow. So I'm actually trying to hammer grip outside my elbow, not inside my elbow. And then as I do this, I'm gonna actually walk it backwards. Maintain that position, walk it forwards. So I'm trying to get the load to pull on that muscle from different forces, lines of pull. So from here, it's trying to pull me more forward, and I'm trying to maintain that. Not doing this chicken wing, I'm trying to keep those elbows in so this line of pull can stay outside the elbow. And then as I'm walking it forward, it starts to pull me more down that way. So same idea, and I gotta lock those shoulders in place. So I do about 3 of those, isometrics, and walking it backwards, forwards 3 times. And I'm making sure I'm not messing up here with my isometric with wrist positioning. I don't want this wrist curling in on me. I gotta make sure it's staying straight line all the way through, and then take a little break on that. Here's another funny little thing. We're gripping this. Basically what I'm trying to do here is grip with my fingers and not use my palm. So I'm getting out of this flexed wrist position. I'm trying to keep a more extended wrist. And so as I do that, I'm gonna put the fingers, I'm gonna keep that more of an extended wrist. I'm gonna keep my wrist and my elbow more lined up. And then what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about rotating through that arm in a controlled way so that I'm getting this rotation on those 2 lower arm bones, so they're rotating over each other. And this is gonna help a lot with the angle when we start getting into bicep and tricep training. This one's pretty cool for tricep. We're kind of getting this, I'm stepping outside, so the cable is to the left of me, on my left side, to the right of me on my right side. What that makes me do is it causes me to actually have to use my shoulder to lock in and pull, as opposed to just being right underneath it. I don't have to do much of my shoulder can kind of just float. If I'm standing outside of it here, I have to use my shoulder to bring it in close to me. And then what I'm trying to do, even beyond that, more advanced technique, is actually to try to bring my elbow behind my shoulder. And then as I'm doing that extension, I'm trying to keep that elbow behind my shoulder, which is gonna actually stretch out my bicep more so than to just being in front. The bicep doesn't stretch as much this way, but if I can really bring that elbow behind my shoulder and lock it in, hold the shoulder, then I can really extend and that bicep stretches out. So the next phase of the arm workout, basically, some of this stuff I'm gonna superset because I'm not using very heavy weights, and it doesn't require pretty much any, it requires effort, but it doesn't require a lot of recovery time between sets. So I can basically just superset biceps and triceps, which is a really great way of just getting more blood flow and pumping up the arms in less time. So we're gonna go into a hammer curl here. And again, I'm really focused on keeping that wrist outside of my elbow. So if you look at the range of my pull here, that wrist position always stays outside of my elbow, as opposed to letting the elbow kind of flare out. We're gonna keep that totally straight line. And then the other thing here is that, again, I'm using my shoulder and I'm trying to push my shoulder and my tricep, my elbow through that pad the whole time. So we do it unilaterally, 1 dumbbell at a time. It can really help us focus on weak points. If there's one side that's stronger than the other side, we can ensure this way by training the stronger side second, that the stronger side's not gonna end up doing more reps or more work. Good benefit from starting your arm workout with unilateral movements. And this is stuff I've done before, but you guys can try it out. For example, like what we're doing here, you pick a unilateral movement where you go right side, left side with your biceps with dumbbells. Then you can go right side, left side with your triceps with cables. And you can just left, right, back and forth. You don't really need to rest. I'm only resting because I'm talking, but normally I would just keep going back and forth. And that way there's no like lull in the start of your workout when you're getting into arm training, because you want to start the rest of your workout with a good pump. And it takes a little while to get that pump going. But this way you're not stopping at all. You're just going to keep going kind of almost like a circuit, left, right, left, right, left, right. After 3 sets, you're pumped and you can go into more of your compound lifts after that. Another thing that I've been working on, when you're using lighter weights, it can be a little bit discouraging sometimes, and it might even take some time to develop a mind-muscle connection because you're not used to using lighter weights. So what I've been doing is pause sets or pulsing sets. It's not really pulsing, but you are gonna pause during the movement, so it'll look kind of like this. And just so you know, you're not gonna get as many reps. So you're gonna go from the very top of the motion, come down just a little bit, pause, 1, 2, 3. You're gonna go down a little bit more, 1, 2, 3. Then you're gonna come down almost to the bottom, hold it there, 1, 2, 3. Then you're gonna come back up, 1, 2, 3. Then you're gonna come back up a little bit more, 1, 2, 3. And then you're gonna come right to the top, squeeze, 1, 2, 3, and go back again in the same way. Not worrying about how many reps we've got. Just making each rep really controlled and feeling every part of that muscle working. And on the last rep, you can use your other arm. Just help a little bit. I do this just for my weaker arm. So I've been working on these ones since Eric showed me how to do this tricep push down with an internal rotation at the end. So as I'm pressing down, I'm not just trying to push the bar down to the floor. I'm actually trying to get my elbows to flare out and then drive my elbows together, which it really gives a nice contraction to the tricep, and it actually eliminates almost all the elbow pain, for me specifically all the elbow pain, because when I try to, again, keep my elbows back the whole time, I don't end up actually locking up my arm. But this way I can lock up my arm fully. I kind of have to move my shoulders around to the front, and then as I go back up, the elbows can go back, the shoulders can go back. So more unilateral stuff here. Setting myself up on this one, I like to essentially just leave my arm fully open like this. And wherever my palm and everything opens up, that's where I want to grab it. So I don't want to be too narrow in like this. It's gonna be very hard to get a full contraction of my bicep if I'm kind of curled up in this way. So really all I want to do is just leave my arm out fully. And I don't need to be facing the machine to do that, right? Because if I'm facing the machine, being a bigger guy, I'm more likely to roll inwards this way. As opposed to being out this way, it's more natural for me. So I don't have to fit myself onto a machine if it feels unnatural for me. I can do one arm and I can leave my shoulder open, and therefore I'm not fighting against my structure. I can literally just curl from there and be good to go. So first set, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually just put my finger on my bicep just for something to kind of stimulate my brain, mind-muscle connection, and just hold that for 10 seconds. And I'm just contracting my bicep. I'm not using my forearm at all. So if you look at my wrist position here, it's almost like it's cocked back as opposed to being rolled forward here, which is gonna make my forearm close and contract before my bicep does. So if I'm really trying to target my bicep, now I'm trying to bring this bicep up and making it stronger. I don't want to use my forearm right now. I want to only use the bicep. So that's why I'm cocking that wrist back. I'm pushing that tricep into this pad as hard as possible. And I'm just trying to hold this weight with the bicep. So biggest thing for sure on this exercise is that I'm really able to keep my shoulder and my tricep pushed down into this pad. So if I start letting my shoulder go, I'm not gonna be able to grab my bicep again unless I roll it back. So I'm just gonna have to keep all of this like pushed down into that pad as hard as possible. And then from there, all I'm trying to do is just flex my bicep. I'm not trying to bring this handle anywhere. I'm trying to push my shoulder and tricep down So my bicep kind of pops up through the skin, and then I'm trying to flex that bicep as hard as I can. Feeling it the whole time. And I might be able to do a couple extra reps on that side, but I'm not going to. I'm only going to failure on my weaker side. So if you're trying to bring up one side of your bicep, one side of your arm, one side of your leg, you have to allow the side to actually catch up. So you can't just keep going to failure on both sides, because then the weakness will stay the same. You have to actually focus on the weakness. So just put your ego aside a little bit on the stronger side and just work with what you've got for the weaker side, and it'll catch up. Then you can go heavier on both. And for right now, just like I said, I'm doing almost all unilateral movements so I can be aware of that. And I'm mostly starting with my weaker side, so I just keep matching to that. So more tricep here on the cable. So whenever I can get both cables, I like to use this one here. And what we're doing is we're taking a far step back. That's gonna make the lockout really, really hard here, and then we'll move forward as a mechanical drop set. So here, extending out all the way. And then I really like actually doing it unilaterally. It's fun. You'll have to hold one side, move on the other side. So just at the end, to really get the blood flowing in that muscle, almost like a blood flow restriction type thing. I'm just trying to really push my elbow through my bicep, if that makes sense. I'm really trying to just lock out and go through this way. So I'm keeping that weight kind of behind me, almost like as if I was extending through it, as opposed to just trying to push things away from me. I'm really trying to like extend out through and keep that full lockout of the tricep. And then once it starts to break, that's pretty much it, because now I'm not really getting that full lockout anymore. So I just go light, maybe 60 seconds, finish off. You can see like the pump just gets out of control from that. And then so we're gonna take the blood from the tricep, push it back into the bicep a little bit more. They're very similar, honestly. This one it's almost the same movement. I'm not getting quite as much of a full contraction on this one. I'm kind of getting more of a stretch down here, and then I'm not coming quite all the way to the top. It's almost like when I get to the top here, the most tension it's gonna be is when my arm is kind of looking like an L, but I'm still gonna have a lot of tension down here. Almost like I'm trying to, again, keep that shoulder back, push that tricep through, but I can almost still get a little bit more, just bottom range. We're kind of almost near the end of the workout, so I like getting this stretch range, because that way I can still kind of go beyond failure on this side without having to use a forced rep, which we did in the last one. And then I'll just match this. And again, it's like, you know, a lot of guys and girls maybe, they're gonna go and try to train biceps. And maybe this is probably not as much of a problem for women as it is men, but if it's a machine that's set, you can't change how necessarily wide this is set. Basically, all I can do is just put my hands wider or my hands more narrow. So if I end up with a more narrow hand, when I'm trying to do my bicep curl, I'm not able to get that full lengthening of my arm, because this wouldn't be a lengthened arm. And even if I kind of still do this, I'm not opening up my bicep all the way and getting this carry angle, which is when my elbow can go straight and my wrist can be straight. It's kind of almost like it's turned in on itself. So regardless of if you have an injury or not, you can benefit and grow your arms quite a bit just by focusing on one side at a time, even though, yes, it is a little bit annoying to have to do that. But if you think about it, like you can just go back and forth, it's not causing you any extra time. So you can just keep going back and forth between sides, matching each side perfectly, and it's almost like you can create this mechanical tension for yourself that's more so than if you fit yourself into a machine. And I'm almost thinking about, I'm trying to get my forearm to go as long as possible, so it's going backwards towards me, and now it's going away from me, out. It's actually not going up that much towards me at the top, so I'm not trying to bring it all the way up here. You can see if I do that, I'm losing this tricep on pad thing that I'm trying to maintain. So tricep stays on pad, elbow stays on pad. I'm getting a full stretch on my bicep. I'm still getting a full contraction because I'm closing this gap here, but again, I'm not coming all the way up because this is just wasting energy. So I just take that side to failure. And again, just to demonstrate the difference versus if I'm having my wrist curled and I'm trying to bring this machine to me here, I'm losing all this tension here on the surface with the pad and my elbow. And I'm not, even though it looks like I'm getting more distance here, what I'm doing is I'm not getting a full contraction on my bicep. My bicep isn't fully contracted here, but my forearm is. So if I open up my forearm, now when I'm at the top, this is actually shortest instead of this being shortest. So hopefully that makes sense. If I close my forearm, forearm gets shorter. This stays more open. If I keep my forearm open, this can get shorter, my forearm stays open. So that little difference in the wrist positioning, yes, you're not gonna be able to use as much weight to move the weight, but you're not gonna be able to move as much weight. If you do it this way, you're gonna feel weak as hell at first. But are you trying to train your bicep to get bigger, or are you just trying to lift weights? That's the important difference here. We just did episode number 83. We're coming up on that big 100. Make sure you guys subscribe to Canadian Beef Podcast. Pretty much, we're gonna keep doing this thing, whether you like it or not, because me and Big Mo, we just enjoy having that conversation every week. It's almost like therapy. In my opinion, it is. And I know Mo kind of feels the same way. We're on the same wavelength, so we can kind of just hash things out. We can talk about stuff. We can get stuff off our mind. And we also just enjoy the interaction from the listeners. So if you guys have questions you want us to answer on the podcast, drop them in the comments on YouTube, because those are gonna be the first questions that we answer on each subsequent podcast. And we really appreciate, like I said, you guys interacting with us. It gives us motivation to keep going. And other than that, the off season started, so we're gonna keep on growing. Right now I'm in my health phase, trying to basically get my blood as healthy as possible so it can flow through these veins. Health veins, because healthy people build more muscle. As a bodybuilder, trying to compete in the sport for as long as possible, longevity is key. You've probably heard that longevity is key. And I think one of the most important things to remember with open bodybuilders is that even though we're expected to compete so many times per year, it's not always possible. If our health isn't allowing us to continue, we have to be smart enough to know when to shut things down so that we're able to regain our health so we can do it again the following year. And that's the hope, is that we can keep going with this thing, at least for me, to get to the Olympia stage. That's the goal. We didn't make it there this year. That's okay. We're gonna keep getting after it until we get there. There's no quit, there's no excuses. 2024, we're coming for the Olympia. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, all that good shit. And we'll see you guys in the next one.